Steven, you got your Crown Black over there, buddy?
Yes, sir. We're going to get a little wet on this one.
We are going to get wet on this one. There's going to be dead shit everywhere.
Sounds like a good time.
It is a good time. I'm very excited to get this guest on, somebody I look up to in the duck hunting industry. This guest that we have is been around for a very long time, and he drops a ton of knowledge on this episode. He goes from A to Z in sea duck hunting, and I'm really excited, man. I mean, what did you learn in this episode, Steve?
I learned how much I still have to learn. let's just face it. The first little bit of it, man, it was like a fire hose of knowledge, stuff that I've never considered from my end when I go out. Because I'm really new into the sea duck end of things, so it was just really cool to hear it from him. A 20-year veteran who just does it, and all in all I know is I want to go do more of it.
Yeah, he definitely gives you that drive to want to go out there and sea duck hunt, man. And it's incredible what he has made a business out of and doing every single day of his life, and just full-fledged outdoor sea duck hunting and brant hunting. He does have the world's largest duck boat. So it's definitely something wicked badass, and I can't wait for y'all to hear about it.
Well, what was nice is, I mean, we went in deep, but we were still just treading the top of the water as far as the subject goes. We could have talked for hours.
Oh, it definitely could have went on. There's no doubt about it. I think there's a lot in this episode that is definitely full throttle information, but I think that we definitely, just like you said, man, we just touched the tip of the iceberg. I think there's a lot that he does that we didn't go over. And definitely going to have to need a part 2 for this one.
Oh yeah, we'll definitely be scheduling a follow-up.
It almost makes me want to go to Maryland and go duck hunting with him.
Yeah, well, I know someone who lives pretty close.
Yeah, me too.
So, just saying.
Yeah.
Of course,
It's
then again, we may have to wait that long before we can get together to hunt anyways, so
Yeah, I know. This whole thing we were talking about, it kind of put us into the damper. So it's nice to be able to get on and converse with people, like-minded people, and kind of keep our minds off of, the negativity that's going on in this world today.
definitely. It's a big bonus. I consider us blessed to be able to do this. And with a lot of these folks who don't have a lot of time to go do things now, they're kind of set back and sheltered with the situation. It opens up a lot of opportunity to talk. So it's got its perks.
Absolutely. And then we're looking very, very closely forward to turkey hunting season here coming very, very shortly. And we got to look towards the future and think about duck hunting and all these other things. So what better way than to talk sea duck hunting?
Definitely. Well, like in, I guess you'd look at it in the podcast world, we are in what do you say? We'll call it week 1 of the actual Corona with Lyme issues. And by the time this comes out, I'm hoping that it's a dead matter and is past and we're back to reality. So,
Yeah. And if not, we got a lot of podcasts to listen to because everyone's quarantined.
exactly. So, while we're all sitting here talking and bullshitting, I think we need to go through and thank a few people. What do you think?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely need to thank people because this is why we have you, Steve, because I would have totally forgot. As
Come in,
always.
come in handy on occasion.
Yep.
Usually as a bad example.
So who do you want to thank first?
Number 1 off the top, we got to go with Mocky Mock and Northeaster Game Calls. Get him in close.
Check your man out, nor'eastergamecalls.com. Get your custom duck calls. Get it? Duck
I
calls.
like it. That's
Turkey
sick.
pot calls, turkey box calls, grunt calls, coyote calls, squealer calls. You name it, he makes it. Not even that, but check out Mab Knives, his custom knife series, mabknives.com. Check him out and get him in close.
You bet. Who are you thinking next?
Oh, man. I'm always thinking about my man Big Hoss, with them adult arrows.
That's right. Some of that
Eh,
ethics archery.
That's right. ethicsarchery.com. Use promo code OutdoorDrive10 to get yourself and save yourself some.
That's right. Go ahead and start getting things put together now because there's a lot of testing to be done before you fling them at some deer.
Ooh, and you got to hide.
Got to hide.
Yeah, you got to hide.
Like you can't see me in a tree.
That's right.
They make something that's specifically built for tree stand, particularly saddle hunters, that helps you do that.
Yeah, it's called Broadside Camo.
Oh, you are right. That Ascender series. Oh,
In
Scott
the Closer
Shearer.
series.
Yeah, he's come up with some pretty unique things.
Check them out, broadsidecamo.com, and you can hide in the woods.
Get your full year's set of camo at the price an everyday hunter can afford.
It's a blue collar price.
Awesome.
And then you can get Jillified.
Wait, are you referring to my wicked and twisted strings?
Wicked and Twisted Bowstrings.
That's right.
Make sure you get yourself some. Get Jillified custom bowstrings, CBY bowstrings, top of the line, any color, and get your bow Jillified. Is there anybody else?
If so, I'm spacing them. There's a lot of people I would like to be saying, but
Walmart? No.
hey, Walmart, Rural King, Tractor Supply, Southern
Yeah.
States.
Oh, those are our partners, and we thank them for working with us. I'm not really sure why they do so, but they do, and they believe in us, and they believe in this podcast, just like you who are listening and supporting us every day.
Absolutely. Well,
I think it's enough of me talking.
I agree. That's enough of you talking. Let's let someone else talk.
All right, let's do that.
All right, let's bring him in.
Nice shot. Here comes a shooter. Shooter. Big buck.
Stack.
All right, we're back on the line. But before we turn this key and get this drive underway, I got to ask one question to our guest. Do you have your Crown Royal Black with you?
Wait a second. Let's see.
Oh,
Salute.
all
Cha-ching.
right, we're there.
It's,
All right,
come on, man. It's only 10:15 in the morning. It just died too.
all right. I just had to ask, because it's what you're known for. So I figured
For
we'd
sure.
start it off right. So let's
Sure.
turn the key and why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
I'm Jeff Cotes. I guide full time sea duck hunting here in Maryland, Maryland Lower Eastern Shore. First off, I got to tell you guys, I go off on these tangents and ramble, so you just need to reel me back in whenever, and however you need to. But
Oh, good.
thankfully and luckily, I've this was just finished up my 20th season guiding full time for sea ducks. I'm licensed U.S. Coast Guard captain, Maryland Master Guide, and I just love being outside. I've been very fortunate over the years guiding sea ducks. Kind of the ducks, dogs, and the decoys. Slogan kind of fits my lifestyle or has fit my lifestyle. I like to fish during the summer. My wife likes to fish, and we're very fortunate, and I can say I'm just very fortunate.
So you have the world's largest duck boat at this point right now, right?
Yes, actually, Steve Hoover Duckwater Boats. That's he says it a little ginger. He says it's the world's largest duck boat. I like to say it's the world's largest duck boat. But it's a 32 footer. It's a 32 footer. It is the hull number two. So there's one in Maine, and then number two's in Maryland. And he's told me that a couple guys have asked about him making a third one. So we'll see if he does. But real quick, in the duck boat world with my sea duck hunting, I started out in a 17-foot TDB, and then I was in a 21 foot, a 25 foot, and now the 32 foot. So
Wow. I mean, and what do you think the bonuses are of having a 32 foot over a 25 or a 21?
what is the advantage? Well, obviously, it's from what the let's do it this way. From the 17 foot, I would take three people, and I was the fourth one in the boat, and you sat on 6 gallon buckets with little spin seats on the top, which weren't that comfortable. Went to the 21 foot boat. I four people still sitting on the 6 gallon bucket seat type deal, and then with the 25, I didn't really want to take more people. I just wanted to take the four that I was taking in the 21 and have them be much more comfortable in the 25. And I actually have nice big chairs, the ones that I use today that I was using in the 25, and they're like 24 inches wide, and they're a very big, comfortable seat. And quite often, halfway through the morning, somebody will say, "Man, I don't think I've ever duck hunted from a chair like this before," that kind of thing. Guys falling asleep in them and that kind of stuff. So in the 32, I didn't want to run anybody off, so I still will do the 4 man hunt, but I can take the fifth or the sixth person with with that same large seat. I also able to have I have a 2 man core sound layout boat, so I can put the layout boat, in the 32 with 4 or 5 or 6 people that everybody's comfortable, and we can still get the layout boat out there it's just trying to raise this. I think what I do is a service business, and I'm just trying to raise the level of my service.
And
And
just put more make you more comfortable, especially
yeah,
being out there duck hunting, you know?
yeah, yeah.
It's
And
like
the other part
it's
of good,
oh no, I said it's like tuna fishing on a center console compared to like a sport fishing boat.
exactly. And the other thing too is, I mean, there's more and more guys doing it, so I always say, like, I just need to stay ahead of the curve. So that was, that's kind of been my the in the Banks boat. I had their first 21 and their first 25, and nobody had the 21 for a while, nobody had a 25 for a while, and then all of a sudden, 8 years later, there's a lot of 25s running around. So again, just trying to stay ahead of the curve a little bit. I don't know how long I'll be doing this for, but new boat, a new motor, and it gets me to the end of it all, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So are you running more long lines or rafts? What kind of like setup do you actually run when you're out there?
Yeah, I've always liked long lines, pretty much. You know, everything is I like zipper top bags. In the beginning, I didn't. I just actually had some homemade, kind of locally made, like these big sacks that with the plastic decoys. I'd run 15, 18 decoys on a long line. They'd all be in these bags ready to go. And then more with turning using my own the birds that I carve. You go into the 12 slotted bags, or for the what I call the Scoterzilla, go on to the 6 slotted. They're actually goose floater bags. But yeah, I always have everything ready to go on long lines, so nobody really needs to do anything. I don't need a hand. I just unzip the bags and pull the lines out. Everything comes out. Generally, everything comes out nice and neat, and even if there is a tangle, everything's got clipped, long line clips on it, so it's easy to easy and quick to tangle a little bit.
That works.
Yeah, and so what are the species that you hunt for down there? Like a lot of scoters. You don't have a lot of eiders down there, right?
We've been seeing more and more each year. So for those that don't know,
Really?
in the sea duck world, scoters, there's three types of scoter. The surf scoter is my logo. The common scoter, I refer to them as a black scoter, and then the white wing scoter. So those are the three type of scoter, and then old squall or long-tailed ducks. Harlequin are closed on the East Coast, and then the common eider, and occasionally a king eider too. But yeah, we've actually been seeing more eider than we have white wings recently.
Wow, that's crazy. I never would have thought that because so I'm from Connecticut and I hunt a lot in Rhode Island, sea duck hunting, and we see. I mean, obviously we have a ton of eider.
Oh, for sure.
Not. I mean, a lot of surf scoters, but you're right, not a lot of white wings. We get a lot of black scoters also, but
Mhm.
I didn't think that there was a lot of eiders down that way.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say a lot. And if you called me to book a hunt, I would tell you that would be the bonus birds. It's not. We're not going to see, you know, you're going to see one, two, three a day kind of thing. It's not. It's not. I can tell you, flying. I've never seen more than four together. So it's usually singles and pairs.
Hmm.
And rafted up, I have seen 10 or 12 sitting together. But generally flying, it's singles or pairs.
How
But again, it's the bonus bird. It's not something you're not coming to Maryland to shoot a nighter. That's for sure.
No, no, you'd be better off going to Maine or Massachusetts or something like that if you wanted your
Yep.
eider then. Do you have a lot of long tails down there? Old squaw?
Not as many as what we used to. No. And I don't know. I talk about this often with guys that more and more on the Great Lakes. So 10, 15, 20 years ago, were those birds there and guys didn't have the boats or weren't targeting them, or social media, you didn't see that that's what they were doing, or or is the trend is that they're not flying in the numbers south of the way that they did. So I'm unsure. I don't think that the old squall are here like they were.
Right.
Definitely 20 years ago, they're not here today like they were then. That's for sure.
So you're not just going out generally just targeting old squaw then?
Yeah, if I was going to do old squall, I would actually be more not out on the ocean proper. I'd be back more like in the shallow bays, Chesapeake Bay, and up in some of the rivers or the coastal bays right here too. But
That's
not
awesome.
the ocean is basically Scoter and old squall. I'm sorry,
So
Scoter and eider, not old
yep.
squall.
So I guess let's wind it back just a little bit. I want to know a little bit more about you, Jeff. So what got you into this? Where did you start? Like, did you come up in a family of hunting, or were you, something that you learned on your own, or?
Yeah, so the very first thing that I ever bought a hunting license for in Maryland was to go turkey hunting. And from that, I had at work, I was in my early 20s. Where we worked, there was a couple guys that duck hunted quite a bit, and I'd never been, and I wanted to go. So we kind of, took one of them turkey hunting, and then vice versa. They took me duck hunting, showed me some of the public lands here in Maryland, and it just kind of spiraled out of control from there. Um, way back in the day, probably 90, 94, 95. Um, Google may have been there, but Ultra Vista was a search engine,
Yeah.
and using that, I didn't know about the internet. I learned really quick about it, but I truly didn't know, what the internet was then. Borrowed a computer to get on, and I just started typing in, duck hunting in Maryland and all that kind of stuff just to see what was out there. And there was an older gentleman named Donald Hughes, Rhodesdale, Maryland, in Dorchester County, and he had this I guess he was like one of like the first bloggers, whatever you want to do. He was basically physically he had a heart condition, disabled. Anyway, Donald was I guess disabled would be that's not the word I'm looking for. But anyway, long story short, he hunted pretty much from September 1st to March 10th. Snow geese back then closed March 10th, and he waterfowl hunted, the September goose season here, the September teal season, and back then the sea duck season was 107 days, so it opened early October, went to the end of January, and anyway, long story short, because he wasn't able to get around that well, there was a refuge that I was going in just over the state line in Delaware, Bombay Hook, and shooting snow geese. And you can laugh at this. The limit on snow geese when I was going in there was a 4 bird limit. So it was
Wow.
it's been a little while ago.
Wow.
but Donald told me if I would take him there snow goose hunting. And again, we exchanged emails and finally called each other. And he said, if you take me snow goose hunting, he's like, every place that I have to hunt, you're more than welcome. I'll show you. And he tried to generally go each day. If it was raining, he didn't like rain, so he wouldn't go in the rain. But other than that, he's like, you can go with me, or you can go wherever the places that he had. He says you're more than welcome to. So speaking of that, in the internet way back in the day, if you used your real name in 1995, that somebody was going to come to your house and kill you, right? So that's kind of how the whole Pitboss thing. It's been the license plate of my truck forever. It's kind of a goose hunting reference on the upper
Yeah.
eastern shore of Maryland in the fields that hunt out of these agricultural fields have pits in them, and it was a seven letters, and I think it's been the license plate of my truck since about 91 maybe.
I was gonna ask where that came from, and
Yeah,
if it.
it just has not has. When I went to a motor vehicle to get that, they thought it was gambling. So we were close to Atlantic City. Was I a pit boss for? If you just type in pit boss, generally
Oh
it's
yeah.
more of a gambling reference than waterfowl hunting. But again, like the truth was, like you wouldn't use your real
Yeah.
name.
No.
That's Nobody used their real names. Everybody had screen names.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So what made you get into to using dogs? Because you're also into the dog world when it comes to waterfowl, and also you have Rye now,
Yep.
and hunting with him and everything like that. And What made you get into that?
Yeah, I've been fortunate there too to have some really nice animals over the years. Way back in the day, I had a chocolate lab that was just basically, yeah, she was a really nice dog and a nice pet, but she didn't really retrieve. And how did I get in? I actually had a friend. We became very good friends. He reached out to me and said he had. And I didn't understand it truly then the difference really between, British labs, American labs, and field dogs and all that type stuff. And but anyway, Royce Cahill reached out to me and said, he said, man, he says, you do all this hunting. He says, I got a really nice breeding. Um, he would live out towards like Frederick, so west of Washington D.C. in Maryland, and he's like, I want to give you the dog. He says, but if you take me sea duck hunting, but you can come up, have a pick out a pup that you want, and that kind of got me. You kind of got me started. I didn't really know that I wanted one, and then I talked to another friend. It was at the time was a Pennsylvania State Trooper that Roy, the breeder, had sent his female Cotes, my dog named Coot that I got from him. Coot's mother was trained in Pennsylvania, and my friend Jim, this Pennsylvania State Trooper, he was into dogs. So I reached out to him to ask him some questions, and he knew of Coot's mother's name was Spook, so he knew of Spook, and it just fit really well. And he's like, man, it's an energy dog, and on and on and on. And man, I was hunting her like 6 or 7 months old. So like by the end of October, she had like 80 retrieves. I had some fellas from New Jersey, and I was like really embarrassed because she's just doing her own thing and picking up birds and that kind of thing. And I was like, you guys, please, I'm sorry, she's only 8 months old and she's only retrieved 80 birds, and they're like, Jeff, stop. Our dog's 8 years old and hasn't even retrieved 50 birds. Like what are you talking about? She's doing really well. So I ran her on a little piece of rope, sea duck hunting. She always had to come back to the boat, so that was a good thing. She go out and get the bird she'd love to retrieve. And that following spring, I got in with some guys. I didn't force fetch her till she was like 13 months old, and just got in a group of guys that were and like she was just over 24 months old. I ran her and had her a titled master hunter, and so she was the saying goes quite often is like your first is your best, and like I didn't hardly know a thing, and she was a dog. So um, I get a little emotional talking about her. Damn, I haven't done that in a while. But
Yeah,
but that was Coot.
it's tough,
That was
man.
Coot. Yeah, it was. I've had some really good times with her. Did a lot of things with her, and she retrieved a lot of birds in her lifetime. And pretty much everything was open water sea duck hunting. So had Coot. Got another dog. She had a little. She didn't use her third leg, or sorry, she was three-legged. She didn't use her fourth leg, and we had a really. He trained and would go down to South Carolina in the winter. Basically, gave her to me for my mom as a pet, and we had a 32-inch snowstorm. She'd run around great on three legs. We had a 32-inch snowstorm, and she'd be following Coot as the snow actually made her use that fourth leg, and then when the snow melted, she was four-legged again. And Richard, he came back from South Carolina and was like it was a miracle. That was, she was four-legged again. So anyway,
That's cool.
yeah, it was really, we sit and talk about like if that snow didn't happen, would she have used her? She literally ran around like she only had three legs. She didn't put any weight on the one rear leg. When she squatted to pee, she didn't put any weight on that leg. She got injured like in a growth plate with one of the puppies when she, like 3 or 4 months old, kind of thing, of her litter mates.
Gotcha.
And so that was that. But so Coot Diamond, a little dog named Poacher. She was a very unique little dog. Got her from Hank McNeil in New Jersey, and then I bred Coot twice. I kept a male the first time, Booger, and he was very nice black male. And then the last breeding, I kept a dog Bristol. So that was the five blacks that I've had. Now we have Rye. So Rye's a nice little girl, kind of a mix of all those that I've had in the past. And the real neat thing is, again, guys, I'm rambling, so you can
It's
reel me
all,
back.
no, you're
No,
good.
you're
You're
good.
good. We love it.
It's real
Keep going.
information.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
good.
so I had a topper on my truck, although Coot always rode up front with me. I had a topper, so I would take off, pretty much go. I was unmarried at the time, and just did my own thing, trained a lot, and the dogs were always with me. And when I went to the vet, I would bring, kind of try to save a couple dollars on this. Um, one doctor at the hospital there, he's like, yeah, just bring them all in, and he's like, I'll just charge you one office fee, and we'll just do all five at the same time. So, excuse me. My wife now tells me that when I would show up, everybody knew Mr. Coates was coming because get ready because there's going to be five. I literally would walk in with five crazy black labs. So I knew Karen probably years now, but you know, it was just she knew me way back in the day with the dogs, and she right at the tail end, was I hadn't done any really wasn't doing any training, wasn't everybody was getting on the older side of things. As a matter of fact, she helped me put down the last three that we had. Actually, she's helped me put all five down. What am I saying? Yeah, she's helped me put all five down, and so the whole and after we put Booger down, he was the last. We put him down in June, 2 Junes ago, and she was like, "Are we going to get another one?" I was like, "I think I'm done, man." I was like, it was just way. It was very hard with Booger for being the last one.
Oh, absolutely.
It was like Coot's lineage, how you ever say that? It was Coot's bloodline, and like he was the last, and we do like to fish, and when we go offshore, like we're always like we're in a center console, so we don't really take the dogs with the sun, and we're always, we get out, take a 2 hour ride out to get out there, and our time's limited because we gotta get home with the dogs and that kind of stuff. So I was like, nah, let's just forget about it. We're good to go. And Karen did try to find OFA, like if there was any other bloodline of Coots out there because I was kind of interested in that, but all the dogs are older, so she couldn't really find anything. So I was like, nah, we'll just call it done. New chapter, something different. And I got invited down to Texas, El Campo, Texas, the following September to go to teal hunting, and super nice, super nice. The guys from Quack Rack, Lifetime Decoys, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful hunting lodge. And there's dogs all running around, and we shot teal 3 mornings in a row. The dogs were retrieving, and when I got back to the airport Sunday night, or I'm sorry, probably late Sunday morning, I got on the phone and called Karen. I was like, I want a dog. I want to get a dog. And so it just started, and I reached out to the guys I field trial with and trained with, and asked them what they knew, and like a couple phone calls later, found a breeding that was should be, and she is should be a nice breeding, high powered energy breeding in Maine, and just kind of all worked together. And ironically enough, we can talk about it if you want, or we don't have to. But Drake's Migration Nation, we were
Yeah,
headed to
absolutely.
yeah, we were headed to PEI to film Prince Edward Island, Canada, to film in October. So part of the trip and part of the story and part of the story on Migration Nation is we stop and pick up Rye. So she's 7 weeks old, and she was right she was kind of thrown right into it right from the get go. So it was kind of a neat little twist. But I don't know that I would necessarily. I probably would have went to Maine if I couldn't find somebody, another breeding. I would have drove to Maine to get her, but it made it just really nice and convenient. We were headed that way anyway, and I think it worked out pretty well.
That's awesome.
So when you're picking out your sea duck dog, what are you looking for in a sea duck dog or a dog that you're gonna open water hunt over, hunting like in the marsh?
Well, I still think in a marsh you still need kind of you do need the high power energy, but like I wanted a breeding that was, people call them crazy. People, she bounces off the wall. She pogos all the time. Bouncing, bouncing, bouncing. But like that's what I think big retrieves, big water, big waves. That's a dog that doesn't care and wants to do that. You can't put the energy in them. You can't put drive into them. You can always kind of harness it and maybe take a little bit out of them. But you definitely, if a dog doesn't have it, you can't put it in them. And
Right.
and again, just because you pick the breeding, it doesn't mean that dog's going to turn out. They're just like people. I mean, brothers and sisters are often very different, right? But just the picking out the best breeding that you can find, I think, gives you the best chance for success. And that's still in a marsh, and there's there's a lot of work that goes on there too, running through mud and cattails and whatever else there. But definitely in the ocean, I think, or any big open water gunning, and a dog that in my case, doing it 6 or 7 days a week, you need a dog that has that energy that can go every day and do it. So
Absolutely. Yeah, because if you don't, then it's gonna be just it's not gonna be able to make it on the 5th or 6th day. It's just gonna be
exactly.
yeah.
Yep.
So do you
So
only hunt open water like sea ducks, or do you do other types of hunting also?
for guiding, the only other thing that I would do, it's still in open water, but it's a much different experience. Would be little saltwater goose, Brant. I'm sure you've seen Brant, Connecticut. I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we shoot
Yeah,
them pretty good here.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's one thing over the years, especially back in the limits when they were a three bird limit, and 60, 45 or 60 days with three birds. I did a lot of brant hunting back in the day, and again, just like sometimes you shoot a brant and they fly and they fall out dead. It's 300 yards away. Well, and especially in some of the shallower water that you can't really, it's hard sand, but you can't run the boat. It's nice to have a dog that can run, either marks it and can get it, or you can run a nice blind retrieve to go pick that up. So, but as far as back to what do I hunt? Yeah, I really do open water stuff. I don't do as many divers as what I used to. So we stay with the sea duck brand. I mentioned in here somewhere along the way that way back in the day with Donald Hughes, the sea duck season was 107 days. This coming season will be the fifth year of the new reduced only 60-day sea duck season, and the bag limits have been reduced some too. So I really do try to take advantage of all 60 days. On the 107 days, I didn't go all 107. The beginning of October, probably not to the 15th or the 18th, you'd see enough to go here. So you're probably a good 2 weeks on the front end, but definitely you could have did it all the way to the end of January.
Now, do you think that that the season has been reduced because they're doing more studies on the sea ducks, or
Well, it's just become the way it was told to me is it was an unutilized resource that they wanted to offer hunters to take advantage of, and that's why even in Atlantic Flyway you could have a 30-day. I remember 30-day duck seasons when it was a three bird limit, so you could have the options for ducks in Atlantic Flyway is it's a 30-day season, a 45-day season, or 60-day season. Up to six ducks, and again, like there was many seasons in there. In the late '90s, it was 30 days with only a three duck limit. And again, in those 30 days, the sea duck season was 107 days. So the underutilized resource they wanted to offer to give a chance to for hunters to take advantage of. And today they'll tell you that the underutilized resource is being overutilized. So that was kind of the major, one of the major reasons to scale it back. They don't know a whole lot about sea ducks. There's a
right?
sea duck joint venture.org has a lot of information about sea ducks, and they just don't they think that they're very slow to reproduce, and there are. I mean, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite because I'm right out there doing it, but I've been doing it, and there's a lot more people shooting sea ducks, specifically in Maryland. Sea duck season opens when duck season is not. So now there's an official opening day. And yes, before in the 107 days there was an official opening day too, but it was October 1st or the 5th, somewhere in there, wherever that Saturday fell. Now the first Saturday in November, when regular ducks is not open, is the official sea duck season opener in Maryland. And that Saturday there's a lot of people out there shooting them. Talking with my friends at the state, I thought it would be a wash possibly. Like the 107 days, how many birds were killed? Now in 60 days, how many birds were killed? And they told me that they only had the first 3 years numbers. There was actually more sea ducks harvested on the 60-day season than was back on 107 days. So they made more of an interest in it. And quite honestly, like this year, when our season or winter here is mild, guys want to shoot birds, and sea ducks are generally usually always there. It doesn't really matter what the weather is.
Yeah, we're seeing that here now too, also because they're like reducing down our puddle duck limits and our goose limits and stuff like that. That a lot of the local kids, or not kids, but young adults, are going
Yep.
out and getting more into sea duck hunting, and that's what I'm doing also. That's what got me more into it, is because going puddle jump hunting, you can only go and kill two mallards, which is great, but you spend all day setting up this, that, and the other thing when I can drive an hour, be in a rig, and killing sea ducks.
Exactly. And just like this year in Maryland, the AP goose. It was a 30-day one bird goose limit, and like you mentioned, two mallards, and yeah, when it's warm, you know, it's guys want to duck hunt. There's only so many days to go, and it's just more and more, more and more people are sea duck hunting. I told you, about staying ahead of the curve. In the late '90s, early 2000s, there weren't all the layout boats that there are today, and there weren't all the specialized duck boats. Traditionally on the Chesapeake Bay, man, you'd be in a 40-foot white work boat, something a crab boat or oyster boat. And that's what you'd be shooting them off of. There weren't, the TDB was really the first duck boat, right? And they came out, they had a 14-foot and a 17-foot, and they did make a 21 they did make a few 21s. But I mean, that was the largest specialized duck boat. The 17 was to me, was the most common, specialized duck boat that was out there at the time. So, sad thing headed our way is I think that there's going to be more of a reduction. Canada next year, they're going to reduce their eider limit from 4 birds to 2, and they also had a special. And I tried to get up there this year, and it just did not work out. But they had a February eider season. I've shot them in New Brunswick 2 different times. I wanted to go back up one more because they're closing that season. So it's a thing, kind of a trickle down effect, where I think, in not too much longer, I think you're going to see probably the eider limit in the United States is probably going to be dropped from 4 to 2, 4 to 3, 4 to 2, something like that, because Canada, the maritime Canada is going to only the two birds next year on eider.
Yeah, I figured that was in the works because you see everybody else starting to go down on them. Why wouldn't United States go down on them, especially going from up there?
Yep.
Um, and that's with the Brant too. I mean, they're doing a lot more studies on the Brant. You're seeing a lot of these more the geo trackers and stuff like that. They're
Yes.
definitely doing more with those. So I mean, there's a lot more of them than there was before, I think. But who knows what they'll end up doing with the limits on those?
Yeah. This year they're going to go. It's still a 2 bird limit, but they opened it up to 50. Went from 30-day season this past season, and it'll be 50 this year. The interesting fact, they seem to be banning more of them, but Brant is the only bird that I know of that they take the winter count, and that's what they don't really fly north and check them out. Whatever the winter count is, they have their little formula that if there's X amount of birds and they have halfway decent hatch, that there should be this many more birds. So Brant is whatever the midwinter count is here in the Atlantic Flyway. That's what they set next year's season on. They don't go up and count them and do much studying on the nesting grounds. They do all the studying, banning them. You know, they do ban them in Canada, yes, but the season is actually set on the midwinter count.
And that's where they're going to the nesting grounds when they're or not the nesting grounds, but or they are the nesting grounds in like New Jersey and so on and so forth down that way.
Yeah, I think more of when they ban them. I think they're just like a Canada goose. They do have to they're molted their flight feathers so they can just kind of round them up. But if you check out a map and see some of these places where the brant on the Atlantic brant are nesting, they're in pretty remote areas. So it's just the money to get there and to do that is what I've always been told was part of the factor of why they use the midwinter count to set next year's season.
That's awesome. And you guys have good numbers of them down in Maryland, right?
Yeah, there. I don't think that it's almost like the old squaw. I don't think there's as many. The total number is what it used to be. Specifically, right here in the Ocean City area, on those 3 bird limits, we had a 60-day season. There were, I mean, I know people throw numbers around, but I mean, there were thousands of them here, and there's enough here to shoot, and there's not an issue with shooting them. But to my eye, I don't see as many. I don't see as many here as there were 20 years ago for whatever
Right.
reason. They're not, they're kind of maybe hanging out more like north of us. Looks like I see a lot of footage from Long Island these days, and in those
Mhm.
groups and those numbers of birds that they have there, that was the way it looked here. So I think part of it too possibly is just like this year. I mean, this winter was super mild. I mean, there were and we January there was days that there was highs in six. Excuse me, it was 60 degrees as a high in January. So I do think if it's cold, I always say birds don't have a conscience. So if they can fly 500 miles and they have food and open water all winter long, why do they need to fly 3,000 miles?
Yeah, and we
And
saw that also with it being so nice here that a lot of the birds that came down, they just stayed here. They didn't have anywhere. Why else would they go?
Exactly.
especially with the Brant. We saw the Brant. I mean, the Brant just stuck around here. They had no reason to leave, and you would just watch these flocks, and they would just stay here, stay here, stay here. And it was the same with the Scoters. Off the coast of Rhode Island was like that. I mean, they'd be rafted up thousands on thousands, and they literally sat there for weeks, unless they got shot up, and they just
Yet there
literally
was
stayed
places
here.
that
They never moved. They never migrated. They just stayed here.
Yep, there was places in the ocean here that there was birds rafted up that I've never seen them rafted up. They're flying through, traveling. You know, the Delaware Bay is to the north of us, the mouth of the Chesapeake Bay in Virginia is to the south, and there's nice bunches traveling back and forth. But I've never seen birds actually, like big rafts of birds sitting, and this year I saw that too. So I did. I was just going through a bunch of older pictures, and those the better Brant days that were here. I mean, there's a lot of pictures I have with the decoys are all iced up, and it was it was flat out cold, and it has not been cold here in Maryland. It just at least the Lower Eastern Shore, it's not been cold. I bet you in a good four or five seasons now.
And that takes a big toll on these birds.
It does.
They don't need to move. So one of the questions I got for you too also is you've hunted out of both TDB boats and duckwater boats. What are like the pluses and minuses? Because I get that a lot of guys because I've hunted out of both. But what are some of the pros and cons of over each boat?
Well, it was so TDB Banks and Duckwater.
Oh yes, sorry.
Yeah, so we're good there. That's all right. It's quite often I say it's Ford, Dodge, and Chevy. It's just they're duck boats, and what do you like best? Um, got a chance with Migration Nation, just north of Boston, with Randy Drago. We shot Eider. I guess it would have been three Januaries ago now.
That was out of the layouts, right?
The layouts, and he also had a
Yep.
duckwater that we did get up on some rocks, and he basically just ran his boat. You know, when I say ran his boat into the rocks, I don't mean it like
Yeah, yeah.
violently accident, but he'd run his boat up into the rocks, leave it in gear so that it's kind of locked into those rocks, and we would get out and get up on the rocks. Like I would not want to do that with the TDB or the Banks boat. I would have no issue doing that with the Duckwater boat though. So I think a lot of it maybe is like regionally, like how do you hunt? I know I don't Steve's one of his sayings is Duckwater punishes docks and rocks, which pretty much again I wouldn't want to do that with a glass boat. It doesn't really matter what brand. Tell me it's a bass boat. I don't I wouldn't run it up into the rocks like that. So I think it has a lot. That's probably the biggest factor. Or what is the difference between the TDB, the Banks, and the Duckwater? Duckwater's aluminum boat, and the aluminum is much more forgiving.
Absolutely. And then and like you're saying, the more the region where you're going to end up hunting and what you're going to use it for. So really kind of do that research as to what you're going to do with it, right?
Exactly. Yes. And then on the East Coast here, I mean, really, you got to get Long Island. To me is sand, but New York City, Connecticut, north, all of a sudden the shoreline does become very rocky. Where I'm at would it's just flat sand. There are the only rocks you see here really are man-made jetties, that kind of thing. It's the Eastern Shore of Maryland is very flat. It's very sandy, but again, like from New York City north, it just turns into rocks, and more rocks as you go north.
And so I have another question about boats
Yes.
also. What made you go with the core sound? Like what was the selling point for you on the core sound over any, the Banks or any of the other?
Yeah. Over the years, Mark Rongers was the first layout boat. I had a two-man Mighty Layout Boys way back in the day. I've had a one-man. I guess I've had all three Banks. The pumpkin seed, the one-man towable, and the two-man towable, and then other those are probably those are the only brands that I've had. Um, Getting to hunt with Randy out of his core sound was a great selling point to me. That it's a boat that you physically a two-man boat that even older I can physically pull it up into my boat. I can't really. I'm not going to pick it up and in the yard and walk around with it. But on the water to get it into the boat, I can pick it up off the water, pull it up into the boat, and it's a boat that's the quality is such that in the yard in the driveway, I can actually stand on the thing, and I'm not a lightweight guy, and I can stand on it, and it doesn't it's a very well built boat, and that was the
Solid.
two factors. Yeah, it's a solid boat that yet I can still physically move it. The Banks 2-man is a great boat, but the thing weighs 500 pounds. You have to have a separate trailer to trailer to the ramp or wherever you're going to launch it from. And so you got at least another vehicle involved, and then you do have to tow it behind you in the water. You're not going to pull that thing up on the boat with you. So that was really my reason of it's going with Terry's boat. Is it's a very well built boat. That yet it's not super heavy. 190 pounds, something like that, that you can still pick up and pull it up into the boat.
So when you're using a layout boat, what scenario would you use a layout boat over than hunting out of the boat? Like what makes you decide those factors?
Uh, when it's too, like, let's say when it's too rough to be on the ocean, we'll be in the back bays, and generally even if it's windy, the back bays are still going to be somewhat flat. So it's just more of um, on the ocean, the birds do not mind. They don't seem to me over the years.
Mhm.
They don't seem to mind a bigger boat. When you get on some of these smaller pieces of water, that there's not a lot of wave action, and it's a little on the flatter side. To me, they tend to stay away. Even a 21-foot boat, they kind of tend to stay away from it. So the layout boat just makes it's a much more effective way to make sure that everybody gets their shooting, gets their birds on the days that we can't comfortably gun from the big boat. It's the days that you can. To me, where we're at, the days that I can gun in the ocean. I mean, from a layout boat, maybe one day a week. Um, just because it's always there's always a wave, there's always a swell, there's always wind. It seems like, so the back bays and the Chesapeake Bay itself, those are the places that I really like to use the layout boat.
For sure. And so when you're picking a spot to go and sea duck hunt, like obviously you're going out, you're pre-scouting, you're seeing where these birds are rafting up and holding up. But what kind of things are you looking for when you're trying to do this? Are you looking for different like say mussel beds or different what kind of things are you looking for when you're looking for a spot to set up?
Yeah. So over the years, I've always liked to been between where they're feeding and where they raft. I don't. It's. I can't say that I wouldn't set up where they're feeding, like on those back bays and stuff.
Hmm.
They're there all the time, and they've been on that piece of water, um, and they're there feeding. In the ocean, there's really nothing sitting. These birds are traveling. Again, early season, most everything is from north to south. Mid season is kind of a 50-50 mix. And we get in January, it seems like the majority of the birds are from the south to the north. But I've always liked to gun them more of being in between those two locations where they've roosted overnight and where they're going to go to feed. So it's good to know where they're going to feed, but I always like to that they've been when I say in between the spots, they've been flying for a little while, and they just seem to be more apt to decoy and want to take almost really just take a break from flying. I think when you find a spot to where they're feeding, you kind of go in there and you kind of almost run them off, if you will, in the dark. And
Yep.
then, like sometimes I've had it that everything comes back. Sometimes like nothing comes back, And so I'd still, if I had my brothers, I'd like to be between, you know, point A and point B, in between somewhere there, versus being on point A or on point B.
That's no, that's great information, man, because a lot of people probably do wonder that, like, because, sometimes you see them rafted up and you think that maybe that's where you need to be. And there's a lot of newer sea duck hunters, as we talked about, with there being more people getting into the sport and stuff. So that's very good information, honestly.
Yeah, so
Um,
like and like kind of with Randy, that seemed to be really kind of how he did it. We were in between, they were rafted out on the ocean somewhere, and we were in between. They were feeding, in behind us, and so they were flying up to come feed, and we were kind of in between, where they rafted and where they were going to feed. And the boat ride back, pretty much the ones that went past us, they were loaded up in there, that kind of thing. And I guess again, I guess you wouldn't be a bad thing to go set up where they're feeding, but a lot of times too, you kind of run into that they're more populated areas. Depends on different states have different rules and regulations about distances from land and where you can be and where you can't be to set up. So again,
mhm.
that kind of plays into it again if you're in between A and B.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Hey, I got a question for like a listener's perspective because a
Sure.
lot of the people that'll be on probably don't even know the difference between, say, sea duck hunting and puddle jumping, things of that nature. Particularly, some of our Midwest friends who've reached out and they've been curious about sea duck hunting. If they were to reach out to you coming in unprepared with no clue what they're doing, no gear, kind of walk through that process, what you would do with them.
So let's rewind just for a second. So the difference between a puddle duck, a diving duck, and a sea duck. So I would say in diving ducks, pretty much everybody knows what a canvasback would be: redhead, bluebill, bufflehead, those kind of birds. When they dive, they just use their legs underwater. So when they're diving to the bottom, they're using their legs, their feet to propel them to the bottom. When sea ducks, the difference between a sea duck and a diving duck is when sea ducks go down, they actually use their wings too. So that's kind of when, because I'll have people say, well, a bufflehead's a sea duck, or a goldeneye's a sea duck, or mergansers are sea ducks, and I guess you'll find them there too, but from a classification standpoint, sea ducks use their wings and their feet underwater versus just a diving duck just using their legs. Um, but back to your question, so if you're talking about hunting in Maryland, Maryland's very regulated, and if somebody came from Ohio to sea duck hunt in Maryland, the letter of the law, they must have a Maryland resident aboard with them. And way back in the day, you had to buy a $5.50 gunning rig license, and there was a minimum boat size, boat length, or gunnel height to your gunning rig. And a lot of people want to tell me, it's, oh man, Maryland's to protect guides and and that kind of stuff, and with the sea duck hunting. And I say no, I think it's more of they don't want somebody showing up from Kansas in a canoe and going out there thinking they're going to shoot some scoter from a canoe, and it capsizes and they kill themselves.
Exactly.
It's very true.
To take advantage of the special sea duck season in Maryland, you've got to be at least 800 yards from any land. So again, if you showed up in a canoe to try to do this, or a kayak, kayak's probably a little safer, but you get my point. If you're in a very small boat, you've got to be at least 800 yards from any land to take advantage of the sea duck, the sea duck season. So in Maryland, anybody can come on a Maryland license and hunt the wildlife management areas. But again, letter of the law, you're really supposed to have a Maryland resident with you, just aboard. And I guess the thought process is that somebody from Maryland maybe knows a little bit better than they're from here, and you wouldn't be from here. So I'm not. It doesn't mean that Maryland guy can't get you in
No,
trouble.
it makes complete sense.
Yeah, but much like as soon as you go south of me in Virginia or you go to Delaware, it doesn't matter. Anybody can go do anything. But Maryland is it's a very regulated state when it comes to waterfowl, and I think it kind of stems back to maybe like the history tradition, that was here. At the turn of the century on the Chesapeake Bay for a sink box rig, you can go see the old receipts where they were paying to get their gunning rig, like this gunning rig license that I talked about. They're paying 1890s. They're paying $2.50 or whatever it was, to register their sink box, to be able to legally hunt out of it. So, a lot of it, I think, some of these rules and regulations stem from, many years of the history of doing it here in Maryland.
Yeah, it's kind of tradition, I guess you'd say.
Yes.
I've had the chance. I do a lot of stuff out there on the Eastern Shore and up the bay, and I've got the chance to go and meet some of the decoy makers, some of the old family decoy makers, and the decoy museum, some of that stuff. And when you go through there, you really get the impression that it is literally a lifestyle, that the communities are based around it.
And especially back in that turn of the century and early 1900s to probably up to the 1960s or so. Little side note to this: YouTube.com/, Pitboss Waterfowl or / Jeff Cotes. There's a couple videos ago that good friend of mine, Scott Moody, filmed it for me. I didn't go up to the museum that night. It was still, the season was still open here, but I did edit it for them, and it's I guess it's about 2 hours and 10 minutes of Jimmy Carver, Jim Pierce, and they shot it right in the second floor of the Decoy Museum in Havre de Grace that overlooks the Susquehanna Flats.
Yep.
And Jimmy he was born in 1935, 34, 35. And he just starts talking about his memories of as a child of not necessarily the gunning, but like just the water lifestyle from fishing and just every life in Havre de Grace quite often revolved for people around the water. And as the seasons changed, gunning was a big deal, and he talks about sink boxes and Jimmy's he's the oldest living Havre de Grace or Upper Bay carver today,
Yeah, I
and
had a wonderful
felt
opportunity to sit.
fortunate to get.
Yeah, I got a good opportunity to sit down and visit with him for a few hours while I was up there, and
Yep,
he kind of walked me through it because that was kind of my first feet in the water type situation into that culture, and
yep,
you know, going through the historical parts and, him making the jokes about punt guns and, yeah, we used to have this thing longer in the boat. We'd dump it off when the warden came by type.
yep,
Uh, just all the little nuances and stuff that you aren't going to get if you go there today unless you talk to these old timers. It was really cool.
yep, exactly. I would strongly suggest that anybody that travels north or south on 95, when you cross the Susquehanna, if you're coming north to south, you're going to cross the Susquehanna River, or just before the Susquehanna River. Obviously, if you're going north, I can't remember the exit number, but it's in Harford County. The Havre de Grace exits there, and I would strongly suggest go stop by and check out the Decoy Museum, Havre de Grace Decoy Museum. It's decoymuseum.com is their webpage. And Christmas Day is the only day that they're closed, so they're open like 11 to 4, 364 days a year. So anybody that's traveling through, and it's worth, even if you're not into decoys, if you're into waterfowl hunting, it's the history of waterfowl hunting on the Upper Chesapeake Bay told through decoys. And they do have punt guns there, and battery guns, and a sink box, and bushwhack boats, and tremendous amount of decoys, and it's a lot of history, and it's sitting right on the shore of the Susquehanna Flats. You're looking right out onto the piece of water where it all took place.
Oh yeah, the view's incredible. And the other thing that's nice about the museum is, you say museum and everyone's mind goes to, we're going to walk into this little room with decoys on the wall. No, this is a big building, multi-floored building. They've got literal full boats in there. You can really see every aspect of the culture there. Check it out.
It's very nice. Unfortunately, with the state of things the way they are, their decoy festival is always the first full weekend in May. So this year it would be the second and third, and it was an honor for me to be chosen as the honorary chairman for the festival. And it hasn't been officially canceled yet, but I think it's not gonna happen this year, I believe. But in the years to come, the first weekend in May, the show's gotten much smaller over the years, but it's a great time to visit Havre de Grace, and to visit the Decoy Museum, and at the middle school is where the two venues where most of the exhibitors are actually in the middle school, but the museum itself is open. Our Madison Mitchell is a famous carver through the 1900s. His shop is in behind the Decoy Museum itself. It's open, so you can get in there and take a look at that, and have all kinds of contests going on. And it just usually you know it's nice weather the first weekend in May, and it's a good time.
Definitely. Yeah, if I'm up around the area and not engulfed in the turkey woods, hopefully it'll be open and we'll swing in.
10-4. Yeah, I don't have very high hopes for it right now, but we'll see.
Well, at this point, I think we're all just crossing our fingers and hoping that this fades away a little quicker than we hope and we can get back to enjoying some of the stuff we do.
Agreed.
Yeah, for sure. So Jeff, I got one question for you, man. I mean, you're here on the Outdoor Drive podcast. What drives you outdoors?
How do I answer that? First thing I want to say is
Don't answer with a boat.
Yeah.
I was going to say that the want to not have a real job. How about that?
Yeah.
Truthfully,
I
man.
think it's perfect.
No, I mean
Yeah.
that's the truth. I've done a lot of things, as worked a lot of different things. And younger, I went to school. I've done all kinds of things, and I enjoy just like sitting here talking with you guys this morning, man. I do. I get up every day and believe that even though the duck season's not here, that it is my full time job. Although I am thinking about fishing, but the sea ducks is my full time job, and I put effort into it 365 days a year, and I just again I think I started this out with saying that I'm just very fortunate. I still believe, that's just I'm very fortunate to be able to get to do what I want to do.
And that's definitely important, man. And we really appreciate you taking the time with us today. Is there anything that you want to leave the guests with as we close up here?
I mean, if anybody has any thoughts, comments, questions, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. have guys ask all the time about decoy carving or wanting to do their own sea duck hunting or with layout boats and big boats. And I guess it just means I'm old these days that people reach out to me and say this kind of stuff to me. But I like to try to help people, and I usually I think I'm pretty good at answering pretty much everybody that gets a hold of me. With all the social media outlets today, it's sometimes I'm a little slow. I miss this message or that message here or there. But if I might, good.
Oh no, and you run your own social media.
Well, I was just going to say, if you don't mind, it's pitbosswaterfowl.com is my webpage.
Of course.
Real quick, if you get on it now, you'll see something that's 20 years old. It is old. A lot of stuff, a lot of plugins don't work right now. So we've got a new one. Scott Moody's just waiting on me to. It's all done. I just need to give him more content to plug into it. So the new webpage will be up very soon. So pitbosswaterfowl.com. I really love Instagram at Pitboss Waterfowl, Pitboss Waterfowl, and same thing on Facebook. You can podcast Jeff Cotes, Coats, and then at Pitboss Waterfowl on Facebook also. So I like to. I have a Twitter account. Stuff gets on there. I just don't follow along with Twitter much, but I do love social media, and and also on YouTube. I try to put up actually for you guys. We got talking here this morning. I'm sitting here editing a video, so I try to put up some what I think are entertaining videos on YouTube. Some are a little instructional, and a lot of them are just kind of me being who I am. But I mentioned it before with the Jim Pierce video. YouTube.com/Jeff Cotes or .com/Pitboss Waterfowl.
And they can also find you on the Drake migration also.
Yeah, unfortunately, Migration Nation is done.
Oh,
10 seasons worth, and it was over. So the PEI trip, that was the last episode that I did with them. They're talking about doing some different things, more of getting away from, if you want to call it, mainstream TV, especially in the waterfowl world. Maybe modern day TV is a thing of the past, but just more digital content. So, but yeah, I still have a great relationship with Drake and Migration Nation.
Awesome.
And you can find those videos too on your YouTube.
Yes, yep.
And they're wicked awesome. You got to go and watch them, especially when you went. I was referring back to it before. Was the Boston one when you went up and you shot the eiders, and then you went to Maine and you went lobster fishing. So that was awesome. And what you do in those trips, man, it's huge.
I like to have fun. Just as a example of how people do follow along. Had an old Pitboss hooded sweatshirt on this morning. It's like, I don't know, 5:45 or whatever, and I'm walking through Walmart trying to scurry through, get my stuff and get going. And there's an older fella riding a cart, and I was grabbing some eggs, and he says, "Hey," he says, I follow along with you, man. He says, "I really love your YouTube stuff." I was like, "Hey, man, thank you, I appreciate that." But it was just funny. Like, he saw the back of my sweatshirt, and he says, I've watched you on YouTube. I was like, "All right, man, thanks a lot, appreciate it."
That's awesome. That's what it's all about.
Yeah, always people are always watching, so it's a good thing.
Good deal. Well, greatly appreciate you jumping on here, giving us the time, taking us for a little float around your world.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
We'll definitely keep in touch, keep things rolling. And for all the listeners out there, we want to thank you guys for taking this ride right here on the Outdoor Drive.
I would give you my crown black salute, but as always, thinking of you, we are.
There it is. All right.
Guys, thank you very much.